What's up, everybody? So we're going to try something new today. We are going to attempt to use this new software that I found that will allow me to make a video and then embed questions in it. Um, so that's what we're going to try to do. This is going to deal with Introduction to Poetry by Billy Collins. It's not a terribly complicated poem, so I think it's a good one to start this process with. This is really just a run through. These questions shouldn't be all that hard. I just want to see how well this works and whether or not it all populates the Google Classroom and stuff. So here we go. Let me go through it once. Introduction to Poetry. I ask them to take a poem and hold it up to the light like a color slide, or press an ear against its hive. I say drop a mouse into a poem and watch him probe his way out, or walk inside a poem's room and feel the walls for a light switch. I want them to water ski across the surface of the poem, waving at the author's name on the shore. But all they want to do is tie the poem to a chair with rope and torture a confession out of it. They begin beating it with a hose to find out what it really means. So we've talked about some new literary devices that we've added to the list at this point. I don't have these handy. I don't think they're not right here in front of me, but we talked the other day in the video about seizures and about enjambment and end stop lines and here it is, ambiguity and illusions and changes in point of view. And I said that one of the ones, or two of the ones that you should know from previous study are similes and metaphors. So that's what he uses to build this entire poem. And again, this drawing tool is terrible, but there's a whole series here broken up essentially by stanzas until the very end of similes and metaphors that he uses in order to illustrate the point that he's trying to make. And that really is the primary device, is the figurative language of both similes and metaphors that drives the poem and the point that he's trying to make about poetry and what he wants, I would argue, students to be doing with poems as they work through them. So that's what I want to take a look at today. Now, similes and metaphors are essentially the same thing. They're taking two seemingly disconnected concepts and linking them together for the point of the reader to make a comparison. So I take thing A and thing B and I link them in the hopes that you will take your knowledge about thing B and apply it to thing A and create a unique understanding of that object or concept that you're talking about. So for example, if I'm talking about NFL drafts coming up, if I'm talking about a running back and I say the running back is a tank. Well, we know a tank is strong and can get through anything and has the ability to run things over and has a lot of power behind it. Well, I'm taking those concepts and I'm trying to apply them to the running back. Obviously, the running back is not physically a tank. That's a metaphor. If I say the runner is like a tank, I'm doing the same exact thing. I'm just distancing myself a little bit by using like, and the same thing goes for the word as. So if you go through here and you look at what he has, I asked him to take a poem and hold it up to the light like a color slide. Well, you need to make sure you understand what that line is saying. And if you don't know what a color slide is, well, then you're going to have a problem. So a color slide, I don't know if most people probably have not seen this. This was a thing much more when I was growing up and in photography and all the rest of it. It's a little square thing like this, usually with a white border. And inside here is a picture, okay? And it's basically like a little mini photo. That's a transparency. So if you're not sure what I'm looking at, just Google color slide. What is a color slide? And you'll see it. And these used to drop into projectors and then would be projected up on the wall so people could see the picture and the image that had been created. So in their small form, the slide itself, they're very little. And in order to see them, if you just hold them down on a desk, you won't really see the image because it's a transparency. You have to hold it up and have light coming from behind it in order to then see it. Well, he's using a simile there because he uses the word like, and he's relating a poem to a color slide. Well, in order for that to be an effective tool, you have to think about what it is he's trying to do. So think about it. If I look at a color slide on the desk, it's just this little square piece of cardboard with some cellophane stuff in the middle, and I don't know, there's not really anything there. And if I pick it up and I hold it up to the light, there's going to be this moment. Oh, there's going to be this moment where you have, sorry about that. I guess my phone is hijacking my computer again. You have this moment of illumination where if I hold that color slide up, I'm lifting it up, lifting it up. I'm like, what is it? Oh, and then I see it. I don't need to think about it. I don't need to analyze it. There's just this moment when the light comes in from behind it, illuminates the transparency, and I can see it, whether it's a picture of a rainbow or a picture of a landscape or a picture of a family member, whatever it is, there's just that instant of, now I get it. So the second one is, or press an ear against its hive. So here's the key. Now this is not a simile because there's no like or as, and it's sort of an implied metaphor rather than a direct metaphor, but we'll get into that more a little bit later. But think about that. It's a hive. So what's a hive? A beehive. And there's almost a weird distancing going on here, pressing ear against its hive, as if the hive belongs to the poem. But I think it can also mean the hive is just sort of the hub of the poem. So if you think about it in terms of the most well-known connotation, beehives, if I wanted to find out what goes on inside a beehive, I could walk up, slam my fingers into the middle of the kind of papery surface of the beehive and rip it open and look inside. But I'd get stung and it would be terrible. If I want to find a more subtle, press an ear against its hive, imagine that image. If I want to press my ear against a beehive, I want to hear what's going on inside a beehive. I'm not going to do that abruptly. I'm not going to do it aggressively. I'm going to come up really, really carefully and just ease in close and very gently and cautiously push my ear up against it. I don't even want them to know I'm here, because if they know I'm here, I'm going to get stung. So when he's using that process of approaching a beehive to compare to approaching a poem, there's a gentleness to that approach. I'm not being aggressive in my looking at the poem. I just want to hear it. I just want to ease up to it and hear what's going on. So there's a comparison being there to the approach he wants students to take with poetry. I say drop a mouse inside a poem and watch him probe his way out. That's the third one. So notice the mouse is not the metaphor here. The poem in that, if I'm going to drop the mouse into the poem and watch him probe his way out of the poem becomes a maze. And that's another one that I think is a good example of this use of figurative language. If you've ever done a corn maze, there's a lot of experimentation. There's a lot of going around this way and, oh, I hit a dead end. So now I'm going to go back around this way. And again, it's not a very forceful process. It's a very experimental process. It's very much a feeling out of things. I'm going to try over here, then I'm going to try over there. There's not a clear, definitive path from the opening from the opening at the beginning to the opening at the end. That same sort of feeling around comes with the fourth one, or walk inside the poem's room and feel around the walls for a light switch. If you walk into a room that is completely dark, you don't go bombing into the room full tilt, smash into the tables and the chairs that you can't see. You ease your way into the room. When you are feeling around the wall for a light switch, that again is, I'm trying to find where it is, and that's a slow process. I don't have a definitive answer. I don't know exactly where it is. It has, much like a maze, this sort of experimental searching sort of quality to it. And also think about the light switch. When I finally find it, flip, and it's all illuminated. Sort of like the color slide. I lift the color slide up, the light hits the back of it, and boom, I can see it all. It's not a step-by-step process. It's just an illumination, like the light's coming on. The same with in the room. I read a poem, and I'm just kind of letting it happen. I'm not tearing it apart like I'm telling you to do. Yes, I see the irony there. But I'm reading it, and then poof, I have this moment of illumination when I get it. I want him to ski across the surface of a poem, waving at the author's name on the shore. The surface of the poem. I want them to water ski across the surface of the poem. Think about water skiing. It's fun, it's recreational, it's entertaining. I'm not asking them to put on scuba gear and dive down beneath the surface of the poem. So essentially, he's advocating for the opposite of what we're doing. And yes, I get that because we're using this as an academic tool, but poetry is not, it's like when we studied Shakespeare and we would watch the movie. We were tearing it apart so we could understand it and so we could learn the process of critical thinking and analyzing and synthesizing and all of that. But it's really meant to just be a play to be performed, and that's why we would then watch it. Well, the same with poetry. We can use it as a tool to study the academic side of things, but it's also supposed to be a tool for entertainment and enjoyment. That's what he's advocating for. And then down here, he gets us. So when he talks about they, I don't know if he's talking about students or if he's talking about me. But all they want to do is tie to the poem to the chair with rope and torture a confession out of it. That's what we're doing when we tear this all apart. When I have you go through the 6-step process, that's what we're doing. And so what you have here is these 5 similes and metaphors that he is using to illustrate and approach what it is he wants out of this. And then down here, you have this final one that's very different than the other 5 because this is the point of contrast. And this is what he wants people to be doing with poetry. Again, just allowing it to come to them, easing in and just listening to it, experimenting with it, taking its time and easing your way through and simply enjoying it versus tearing it apart. So there you go. I hope you've answered the questions as this has gone through. And yeah, cool. Any questions? Let me know.